Hey guys, it's been forever. I actually just wanted to talk about something that was going on with Navie. I know I've been gone forever, and I know that if you don't follow me on Facebook or anything, then you probably don't know what's going on in my life. But I'm just going to pop back on here really fast and talk about this because I want to know if anybody else has gone through it to see if I could get someone else's experience. So, when Navie was born, she was born with a cyst right here on her nose. It's a dermal cyst, and it's right here on the bridge of her nose. You can get them all over. It's more common to get them above the eye, on the cheek, but it does happen here on the nose. So as soon as she was born, I noticed it. I'll insert a picture here so you can see what I'm talking about, like right here on the bridge of her nose. Anyway, so from the time that she was born, I would always ask her pediatricians and stuff like if they knew what it was because it had hair growing out of it. At first, I thought it was maybe an ingrown hair or a birthmark or something like that. But every time I would ask them about it, they were like, "Oh, it's probably just a mark she was born with. We'll keep an eye on it." They asked to tell me if it ever started oozing or looking red or anything like that. So we kind of waited until she was probably around 1. It started to ooze a little bit. And anytime I pointed out the hair too, like growing out of it, they would be like, "Oh yeah, that's weird that, hair's growing out of it." But nobody had even mentioned that it could be a cyst for quite some time. Anyways, we ended up changing pediatricians because I didn't love the one that we had. And he saw it, and he again wasn't too concerned about it, but he did think it was a little weird that it had hair growing out of it. Again, asked me, if it had ever oozed or anything like that, and I said, well, now that you mention it, it has oozed a little bit out of it, and it kind of goes in waves. Sometimes it will, and sometimes it won't. So at that point, he referred us to an ENT. So we went into an ENT. And they said right away, they're like, "Oh, it's a dermal cyst." And I guess they happen in like 1 in 33,000 births, so not super common. And the kind of jump ahead a little bit, but the doctor who's going to get rid of it, he says he does like 5 to 10 surgeries a year on this in various places. So and he works up at a major hospital around here that services states all around here because it's a really big, it's kind of like Texas Children's Hospital, but it's not that, but similar to that. So that ENT decided that he needed to order an MRI. So for me, like when people said it was a dermal cyst, I just assumed it was like this little tiny pocket that's underneath their nose, like just the removal of a normal cyst on your body, everywhere else. Apparently, this type of cyst is one that is, it happens in the developmental stage, like utero, in your stomach, and it's like skin cells that are stuck underneath your actual skin, but it continues to, I guess, grow like skin. Not really like skin, but like the cells grow, and it can contain hair, it can contain teeth, like all sorts of crazy stuff. But because her dermal cyst was here on her nose, it was actually in a really bad spot. So that type of cyst can go all the way through the nasal cavity. Sorry, I've got allergies so bad. All the way through the nasal cavity, and it can actually go to the skull. It can also go through the skull, and it can also go into the brain. So it ended up being a lot more serious than I thought it was going to be. It's not life-threatening, but it's can be a pretty invasive surgery. So we went and got an MRI done, and when we got it back, it was unfortunately just about as bad as it could possibly be. So it is in the nasal cavity. It has gone through her skull, and it's to the brain. So fortunately, it didn't go into her brain, which would make a whole nother surgery. So if it's into the brain, they have to actually cut her open kind of in a zigzag from ear to ear, fold her skin forward, and have to be able to remove it that way so they can have a better view of the brain. So thank goodness it wasn't in her brain. However, it is through her skull, and to the skull base is what they call it. So it's through the skull, between like the sac that surrounds the brain and the skull. And apparently there's a hole in your skull that doesn't always close when you're being made. And hers happened so that the cyst actually grew through the hole, and so it never closed. So the cyst is through that hole and into the sac, between the sac of the brain and the skull, if that makes sense, and through the nasal cavity. So they reviewed that. He said that it's probably one of the worst cases he's done, unfortunately, of course. But the good news is he still thinks he'll be able to go through the bridge of the nose, and they're not going to have to do the big incision across her head, which would be awful just because it mess with your hair. And I mean, thank goodness she's a girl so that it can kind of be hidden in her hair, but it's got to be, I mean, it's got to affect your hair a little bit. So I don't want that ideally. So his concerns when we went in there are, since it's right here on the bridge of your nose, you have two bones that run down right here. It can widen those bones like this as the cyst grows through. And as she grows, it can get wider and wider and wider. And then the bones, they get so separated that you end up having to do a rhinoplasty down the road. So they have to take a little bit of her ribs and restructure a bone for her. So with that being said, and the fact that it is to the brain, if it got infected, she could get meningitis really quickly. So between the bone structure and the meningitis factor, we have to remove it as soon as possible. They were going to wait till she was about 3, but now with all of that in consideration, we have to remove it as soon as possible. So after he reviewed all that information, he thinks that these bones are close enough right now that they're going to have to break both of the bones, or at least one, and get the cyst out, reset the bone. And he's hoping that she's young enough and they are not separated enough that it will just heal itself and be fine, and we won't have to do a follow-up surgery. So that's our hope. And then they'll be able to just go through the hole that's already existing in her skull and get the cyst out of that area. So with all of that information, he decided that he wanted to get a CAT scan. So this next Friday, we're going to go in for a CAT scan, so that he can better see the bone structure, so that he knows the approach to get it out. With all the information they know, they think they're going to be able to go through the nose. But with the CAT scan, they're going to be able to know for sure. They're just doing it for precautionary measures, which I'm fine with, because I'd much rather that than them cut open her nose and then they realize they're going to have to do the other surgery also to be able to get it out. So we'll be able to find out for sure after the CAT scan which approach they're going to be able to do, go through the nose or have to do the major surgery. So my hopes are that obviously they could go through her nose. They said it's going to be about a 3mm incision, maybe a little bit more, but the unfortunate part is we do have to do it young, so as she grows, the scar will also grow. They said it's something that you can revisit down the road and get surgery on. But yeah, I mean, it's another surgery, so obviously we don't want that. But I tried to research dermal cysts on the nose. Like I said, I found them a lot on the eye and on the face and stuff, but I did not find them on the nose very much. So I thought I want to do a video on it, kind of our journey through it and her recovery and kind of how the scar looks and all that, because I can't find any information on how the scar ends up looking, because I'm worried. I mean, of course it's cosmetic and we need to remove it. It is what it is, but I also am worried about how the scar's going to look. I want to make sure that It's not something she's going to be self-conscious about. Make sure it's not big, or, you know, they don't do a bad job closing it, and we'll probably end up having a plastic surgeon come in and close it, because I just want to make sure that it's closed well and everything heals the best that it can. So anyway, that's where we are right now. Like I said, next Friday we're going in for the CAT scan, and we'll know some more information then. So if you'd like to follow our journey as we go through her removal of this dermal cyst, hopefully we can help some people out, maybe answer some questions as we've gone through it, hopefully, and everything is successful. And yeah, but it's tough. It's tough seeing your baby go through this kind of stuff and having to sedate her 3 times within 3 months, because we do need to get it removed so quickly. We're having to do one after the next. So it's been about 2 weeks since our CAT scan. Her MRI is next week. So sorry, the other way around. Her MRI was 3 weeks ago. CAT scan is in a week, so about 3 weeks apart. And then they're hoping to do this surgery the middle of March, was the plan originally, but we had to move her CAT scan back due to scheduling. They said we didn't have to sedate her. And so they scheduled it for Monday, and then they called me back and they're like, no, we have to sedate her. So then they weren't able to fit it in that day now. So now I have to wait till Friday. So that moved it off a little bit. So I'm guessing it's going to be more like the end of March, early April, when we actually go in for the surgery. So, yeah, fingers crossed. I just hope so much that when we get the information back from this CAT scan, it's still the same, that they're going to be able to go through the nose, because the other surgery is a lot more recovery time, a lot more invasive of a surgery. It kind of just makes me cringe just thinking about your baby getting their head cut open, and ugh, I don't even want to think about it. So, anyways, if you want to follow our journey, follow along. I'll try to do some videos along the way, maybe of her in her recovery and the scar after, and hopefully I'll do another video here after her CAT scan, and get you guys up to date with that. So anyways, we'll talk to you guys soon, hopefully. See ya.